Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about Authorised Economic Operator status, brought to you by the Institute of Export and International Trade. My name is William Barnes-Graham, the Senior Content Editor at the Institute, and I will be your host for this afternoon. And thank you all for joining us today. This is clearly a topic of some interest to UK traders. We already have over 300 on the line, and we're expecting more to come along shortly. So a warm welcome to all of you today. Move on to the next slide, please. I'm delighted to welcome a debut speaker today in Vicky Payne. Vicky is with the Institute of Export. Hi, Vicky. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Vicky, I don't know where you're dialing in from. Where are you based?
I'm in the Midlands today, so nice
Midlands.
and sunny here at the moment. Yep, near Leicester, so smack in the middle.
Excellent. I'm a bit south from you. I'm North London. It's also sunny here, but we have had some cloud. We are due April showers, I believe. But anywho, Vicky is a customs expert with the Institute and a specialist tutor for the UK Customs Academy as well, with plenty of experience delivering bespoke training programs and 20 plus years in the industry. So you're definitely in safe hands today. But before I hand over to Vicky, if we move on to the next slide, I'd like to run a quick poll to find out a little bit more about you, our audience. So I'm going to launch this now. And basically what we'd like to know is what will you hope to gain from this webinar? The options included there are: my firm is already AEO approved and wants to maintain this status. My firm is interested in applying for AEO. You want to learn more about AEO and whether your firm could benefit from it. Education/curiosity, or other. And while you are answering that, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Firstly, you can contact me with any comments or questions using the question panel on the control window to the right-hand side of your screen. We hope to get to a number of your questions towards the end of the webinar and during a couple more polls in the middle of the presentation, but please do bear in mind we have already received lots of questions in advance, so we will not be able to get to everyone's queries today. But if you feel as though your question has not been answered, please do review our technical helpline or training and consultancy offerings, which we'll talk about later in the webinar. Secondly, you will all be receiving access to today's slide pack and a recording of the webinar in a follow-up email we will be sending over the next day or so. So for the time being, please do make sure to try and listen in to today's presentation. Now I'm just going to quickly close the poll. Thank you everyone who has answered so far. And just to share the results. So unsurprisingly, I suppose, people here are here to learn more about AEO, to see whether their firm could benefit. About 2/5 of you are here to learn more. A quarter of you are here just, for education and curiosity. And then just over 15% each for firms who are either already approved or firms who are actually in very much in the kind of stage where they're interested in applying for it. So I think there's a decent spread of companies on here, and I hope all of you find this webinar informative today. But without any further ado, it's my pleasure to hand over to you, Vicky. So over to you, Vicky.
Thank you very much, Will. Welcome everyone, thanks for joining. So I'm just going to take you through a few slides around AEO. We'll have a few polls throughout, and obviously we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So contents today, we're going through what is AEO, who should apply and why, criteria and application process, and audits and managing AEO. So what is Authorised Economic Operator status? So it's a scheme that declares the trader as being approved by National Customs Authority for customs compliance and supply chain security standards. An Authorised Economic Operator is a party involved in the international movement of goods, and it's an international quality mark providing traders with trusted trader status. So there's two different types of status for AEO. So the first one is AEO-C status, which is Authorised Economic Operator Customs Simplification, and then AEO-S, which is Authorised Economic Operator Security and Safety. So we'll be going through each one of those and the benefits throughout the slides. So AEO Customs Simplification, AEO-C. You hold this status and you're based in GB, you could benefit from faster application process for customs simplified procedures, a lower risk score, and a guarantee waiver. So according to the World Customs Organization, the WCO, an authorised economic operator is a party involved in the international movement of goods in whatever function that has been approved by or on behalf of a national customs administration, as complying with WCO or equivalent supply chain security standards. So simply, an AEO certification demonstrates that your role within the international supply chain is secure and that your customs controls and procedures are efficient and compliant. So obviously the system exists in the shape of AEO, the AEO scheme, which is an internationally recognised mark of quality that gives firms trusted trader status. So following the end of the transition period, the UK does have its own equivalent legislation around this. But if you are a trader in Northern Ireland, all Northern Ireland Authorised Economic Operator authorisations will continue to be recognised in the EU. So that's just a note there on the Northern Ireland piece. So AEO Security and Safety, so AEO-S, if you hold this status, you could benefit from improved profiling at customs, preferential treatment by customs on international trade movements, reduced declaration requirements, and reciprocal arrangements and mutual recognition. So there's the difference between the AEO-C and AEO-S. So you've got AEO-S, which covers safety and security in a bit more detail and is applicable mainly to exporters. AEO-C offers a vast range of benefits, many of which focus on the import of goods and use of special procedures. So who should apply and why? So the benefits of AEO, we've got faster clearances, improves lead times, simplified processes, and reduces risks of delays. So some of the key benefits to AEO include the faster clearance operations with fewer physical and documentation checks by Border Force. So not only on imports to the UK, but also on exports to countries such as the US, Japan, China, and the EU, which have mutual recognition agreements with the UK. So companies trading with businesses in China who operate under AEO status have experienced instances where goods have received immediate clearance as opposed to the standard 3 to 6 days wait. So there is a benefit of faster clearances there. So further benefits, completion of paperwork is simplified. Sorry, just go back one. So completion of paperwork is simplified, customs simplified procedures, application process is quicker and easier to qualify for, recognition of being a competent trading partner, shows that the supply chain is secure, safe and economically efficient, and savings can also be made in the form of reduced guarantee amounts. So for companies that are AEO-C certified, you can get guarantee waiver up to the level of your deferment account. AEO certification also offers the provision of a comprehensive relationship with customs. The commercial benefits for a business in having AEO status or carrying out the work necessary to document procedures and improve the security of your supply chain to obtain AEO status may include reduced incidences of theft or loss in transit, improved security and communication with your partners in the supply chain, and improved customer confidence. So why consider AEO-C? It's simplified declaration procedures under the Customs Freight Simplified Procedures, CFSP. Got local clearance procedures under the CFSP scheme and the National Export System. Simplifications for regular shipping services and guarantee waivers. It's also an industry kite mark and a useful marketing tool. So your business, obviously, if you're advertising that you have AEO status, there's a standard there that businesses know that when they deal with you, all these processes are in place. So why consider AEO-S? We have a lower risk score used to determine frequency of customs physical and documentary checks. Consignments may be fast-tracked through customs controls. So if selected for an examination, priority will be given to non-AEO. It will be given over non-AEO consignments, sorry. So anyone with AEO status will have priority on those. when required to make pre-arrival or pre-departure summary declarations, AEO-S will be able to omit certain data elements. There's a potential for future reciprocal arrangements and mutual recognition with countries outside of the UK, which is also known as the MRA, the Mutual Recognition Agreements, for example, the USA, or trading partners that adopt the WCA SAFE framework. So who can apply? Anyone involved in the international supply chain can apply for AEO. You've got importers, so a person or a business that imports goods and are declared as the importer of record when the import declaration is accepted. Exporters, a person or business on whose behalf the export declaration is made and who are the owner of the goods or have similar right of disposal over them at the time the declaration is accepted. Warehouse keepers, a person or business authorised to operate a customs warehouse. Manufacturers, a person or business ensuring a safe and secure manufacturing process for their products and supply of those products to the clients. Freight forwarders, who are organising the transport of goods on behalf of the above. Customs agents, a representative acting on behalf of the above, either as a direct representative or indirect representative. And carriers, person or business that transport goods or is in charge of or responsible for the operation of the means of transport. So just back over to Will after that introduction of AEO for another poll.
Thanks, Vicky. Thank you very much. Good start. Let's go on to our second poll. So we are now going to ask which of these best describes how you handle customs processes. You can select all that apply, so you can do more than one option, and the options here are mainly outsourced to an intermediary, managed in-house with documented procedures and training, AEO-C accredited, ready to apply, would welcome a readiness assessment, heard of AEO, would like to know more. So this would be interesting to see kind of what level of involvement companies on the line here today have in their customs procedures. We've had a load of questions in already. Thank you everyone for the questions so far. First one, though, Vicky, is from Rajesh, who's asked, I work in the customs team of our business, which is a small business. Would I need to involve our board of management and other areas of the business in the application for AEO-S?
Okay, thank you for the question. So you'll need to include other members of the organisation when applying for AEO. Obviously, you'll understand that different systems need to be looked at, and processes such as logistics, internal controls for irregular transactions, plant security, staff training records, IT security, understanding the access to shipping areas, loading docks, etc. So it's all under the safety and security aspect as well of that, but also screening new employees. So teams that will need to be involved is such as security, IT, finance, HR. Any outsourced contracts need to be understood as well. So any maintenance contracts and cleaning teams. So a responsible person, for example, a director within a business would apply for the status usually. But you'll need to give up-to-date evidence of the person's role and responsibilities and competencies, whoever is applying as well. So it's best to keep all management level involved in the decision to go for AEO, just because of the amount of input you'll require from the wider business as well.
Thanks, Vicky. So it's a wider business concern, but you'd want to have the management endorsement for sure. A question as well, just a clarification actually from Michael, who's asked, what do you mean by a lower risk score?
So obviously you've got risk score against businesses with HMRC. So there'll be trusted businesses. So if HMRC are basically coming in, done your AEO checks, they've already checked that your business is reliable, financially okay, safety and security is in place, so they can actually trust you to do clearances without constantly checking on you. So there are obviously businesses that fail to provide this information or can meet the standards. There'll be a kind of scoring system with HMRC. So obviously your compliance record will be affected if you fail to meet all the standards or regulations that customs set down. So it will basically support that in any movements that you make.
Thanks, Vicky. And one more, if I may, just because a few people have asked this. A few people have been asking, um, is it beneficial to be AEO accredited even if someone else is doing our customs entries, like a customs agent or a forwarder?
Yeah, I mean, if you're using a broker or a forwarder to do your customs declarations, they're only doing one piece of that. So I think we'll go into it in a little bit more detail on who's involved, but obviously you've got everything end to end. So, like as I said before about compliance records, supply chain, buying and selling obviously between companies. If that supply chain is covered by AEO rather than just one area, such as the customs brokerage, you know that end to end your goods are going to be covered by the AEO qualification, and obviously the safety and security aspect is a big piece of that. So obviously it's good that the broker would be, or the freight forwarder would be, covered by AEO, because you can trust them in doing your declarations and they are at a certain standard. But if you as a business are covered by AEO, there's aspects such as for example inward processing or outward processing and things like that, where HMRC have already done the audit checks on your business, so they know they can trust you when you go through authorizations for special procedures.
Great, thanks, Vicky. I think that's hopefully answered a few people's questions. That's a really great answer. Thank you. I'm just going to close that poll now, show the results. So over half of you do use a customs intermediary for customs processes, but there's a fair amount of you who do things in-house, so just under a quarter. 14% of you already AEO-C accredited, 5% only a few want to go ahead with readiness assessment at the moment, but a few more of you over a quarter want to find out more. So hopefully this webinar will be useful. But anyway, back to you, Vicky.
Thank you. So the next stage we're going to look at is the criteria and application process for AEO. So an overview of the AEO criteria. So it includes, but it's not restricted to, appropriate record of compliance, satisfactory system of managing commercial and, where appropriate, transport records, which allows appropriate customs controls, shows proven financial solvency, and appropriate security and safety standards when you're applying for safety and security and safety AEO certificate. So an overview of the AEO criteria. Applicants must be a legal entity. They must be established in GB or NI, obviously dependent on your business, where they're located, etc. And obviously I referred to earlier about Northern Ireland being obviously under the EU AEO scheme. Be actively involved in customs operations and international trade, and also have an EORI number. HMRC checks. So some of the checks that HMRC will take place will be on your tax and customs compliance, which again comes back to the scoring that we referred to earlier. Customs record keeping, practical standards of competence or professional qualifications, proven financial solvency and security and safety. So this is just a bit of an overview. There is obviously more detail behind this, and there's more requirements, but this is the overview of what they'll be looking at when you apply and the checks they will make. So the application process. You'll have a self-assessment to start with. So obviously you're going to assess your own business and see if it's worth going for AEO, and obviously if you can go for AEO with all the requirements behind that. You'll then do the application to HMRC once you've done your own self-assessment internally. And then you've got your validation and audit. So obviously HMRC will then come out and audit your business to ensure that you meet all the requirements. So the information needed to apply for the AEO status, you'll need to gather information about your business. There's guidance online, and you have to submit this through the government gateway. So the application and guidance are known as the documents of C117 and C118, and further information is in Notice 117. So obviously applying for AEO accreditation can be quite a lengthy process. However, given the benefits offered and the decreased level of customs inspections for goods being transported by AEO accredited companies, it's evident that it's going to be an in-depth process to ensure that your supply chain security is there and obviously all your records are in place. So the extensive assessment process includes self-assessment and visits to premises by HMRC to carry out on-site audits. And the criteria for application for AEO-C includes the need to provide evidence of history of tax and customs compliancy of 3 years, or the information available if the business has been established for less than 3 years. It needs a satisfactory system of managing commercial and, where applicable, transport records, allowing for appropriate customs controls, and evidence of financial solvency and evidence of competence. So if applying for AEO-S or AEO-C, you'll be required to provide evidence of appropriate security and safety standards being in place and documented. So you need to make sure that everything's documented also. And with the time and effort required for the application, you may be wondering whether it's actually worth it. But as AEO becomes more widely spread, more companies are insisting their suppliers are AEO accredited. So they're looking at the supply chain and making sure the businesses included in that supply chain are actually accredited with this process. So a pre-submission checklist. So prior to applying for AEO, look at the cost-benefit analysis. Is it worth it for your business? The senior management buy-in and sign-off. So as I said, keep management involved in your decisions or your application. Make sure they're aware of that. Development of an AEO project plan. A self-assessment. Remediation of compliance gaps encountered. Documentation of all relevant processes to a standard accepted by customs administrations. So all these pre-submission checklists will be completed obviously by a member of the business, a staff member that will be able to look at the whole business and create the checklist and make sure that all the questions that are going to be asked by the AEO application form are answered up front. So obviously you'll be doing a bit of a readiness assessment in this instance prior to submitting the AEO application. So once these steps have been completed, the AEO status application pack can be submitted to the Customs Administration. And it's essential that any AEO status application is completed accurately and double checked before submission. So for businesses to ensure the application will be accepted and processed by HMRC, you want to make sure obviously everything's right before you do it. So just make sure that obviously you're reading up on the legislation, you're reading up on what's required for the application, and do your own internal checks prior to making the submission to HMRC. So the post-submission checklist. So make sure you answer follow-up questions from customs administrations. So anything that if they're missing information or require further information, make sure you obviously answer that and get back to them as soon as possible. Preparation for an official audit by customs. So make sure the business is ready and everyone is aware that HMRC may be coming in to audit your business or premises. The common reasons for rejection. So if there's insufficient responses on the initial application form, obviously HMRC will look at rejecting that. If there's lack of evidence during the assessment stage, or if there's general lack of understanding of the criteria, so not having a comprehensive understanding of UK customs legislation and customs entry auditing. So back over to Will for another poll.
Great, thanks, Vicky. This poll is going to be a bit of a two-parter. It's the same question, but the first of these questions, so it being what are the most important barriers to your company doing business overseas? This is going to relate to your company circumstances. The next one's going to relate to the general business environment. And just to let you know, this is a question we're asking as part of our liaison work with the Department of International Trade. So if you, by answering this question, you are helping us to feed back to the government. So if you could pick 3 of the options here: managing bureaucracy, managing logistics, access to finance, access to credit insurance, and lack of language skills. So Vicky, just while people are answering this double bill, first question for this part. Lucinda's asked, does a business require customs qualified staff in order to get AEO status?
Okay, so as we've seen before, obviously they're looking at competence when they do look at a business for AEO. So they'll need to make sure you've got a customs competent expert and details of their professional qualifications and training if they have them. So details proving that the person is in charge, who is in charge of the customs matters, they need a minimum of 3 years practical experience in that area. If you or the person in charge of customs have received training, they will need to know who the recognised establishment was for that training, if it was recognised professional or trade association, or if your authorisation covers Northern Ireland, they'll need to know who the customs authority of the EU member state was as well for Northern Ireland. But yes, it's based on knowledge and experience, and also additional training and qualifications if they are applicable, or if they are available for that company.
Great, thanks, Vicky. I'm just going to close that first part now. I'm going to ask the second part straight away afterwards and share the results after. So this one, again, is around the business environment and in terms of business barriers. Options here: finding trustworthy partners and customers, adaptation to post-Brexit circumstances, attitudes towards UK businesses, corruption, and then the competitive environment in overseas markets. We've had a few people, we had one question asking, what is the expected take-up of AEO in the UK? And my understanding is that it was a low take-up before Brexit, but I don't know if things have changed since. But we've had a few people asking around the benefits and kind of to what extent their business will benefit. And I wonder, Vicky, in terms of this kind of post-Brexit scenario, are the benefits of AEO now more commercially advantageous to companies because of the more competitive environment they're entering, as the UK is now separate to the EU? Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, obviously it is very, very beneficial to have it, and obviously customs will probably be looking at it as a status going forward, that more trusted traders obviously they have in the UK, the better it is for HMRC and trade. But there's a lot of businesses obviously that only dealt with the EU prior to January, so it would be good just as an overall audit of the business as well, to look at AEO and look at the status and look what's expected from a business, especially businesses that have never imported and exported before. It will get them to actually look over all of the business and check their safety and security, etc. But yeah, it's one of those that you have to look at it as a business by business case. Will it benefit the business? As we said earlier, a lot of people are now looking. AEO is basically a status whether people want to deal with you as well. So it's obviously always beneficial when you're selling and buying goods as well to have that status. Again, it's throughout the whole supply chain as well. So I'm assuming there's a mixture of people on here, which are freight forwarders and brokers and traders. So it is beneficial, and it's a good, obviously, selling point for your business as well, to say that you have those standards in place in your business. So yeah, again, it's a company decision of whether you want to take that on. You may have to implement systems to control areas, so you have to weigh up the costs and the benefits.
Am I right in saying that obviously a lot of larger businesses will be more likely to have than smaller businesses? Is that a correct assumption?
Not necessarily, because larger businesses sometimes have more complex supply chains, and maybe manufacturing locations or warehouse locations. And you've obviously got to consider that everything needs to be covered by AEO. It's not just their main head office, for example. So a smaller business might find it actually easier to get AEO status than a larger business, depending on the complexity of the business.
Interesting. So easier to get, but still the same kind of level of competitive advantage potentially.
Potentially.
Really interesting. Really interesting. Thank you, Vicky. I hope that's answered a few people's questions. Thank you, everyone, for all the questions so far. I'm just going to close that second part of the poll. If I go back to part 3, I share the results from that one. So about 3/4 of you said managing bureaucracy is a real barrier for you at the moment, perhaps unsurprising so soon after the end of transition. 58% of you say managing logistics. That's really interesting. Lack of language skills, only down 20%, maybe slightly surprising. But then finance and credit insurance, lower barriers at the moment. Then in terms of the second part of that question, just to check the results very quickly, over half of you have said finding trustworthy partners is an issue. Tying into the first part around bureaucracy, adaptation to post-Brexit circumstances is up there at 71%. And then also competitive environment is up there about 50%, and then lower responses to the other options. Thank you everyone for answering that, but enough of me wittering out on about polls. Back to you, Vicky.
Thank you. So the next and last section we'll be looking at is audits and managing the AEO status. So when applying for the AEO status, HMRC will audit the trader in the following areas. You've got internal controls, so all your systems and control systems around that. So a company is expected to demonstrate that they perform their service to a specific standard consistently. The emphasis in the process is on the word consistent, so especially in relation to quality and customs compliance. So you need to show a range of documentation that highlights how your activities consistently meet high standards of practice. Documented procedures. Traders are expected to document their processes and procedures in writing. There is no set format for SOPs, so standard operating procedures, but it should be designed to meet your internal requirements. So your SOPs will need to contain all the information relating to the processes of your business. So anything that your business undertakes, it needs a standard operating procedure around that, providing a point in proof that your business activities meet the standards set and do so consistently. So again, when you're looking at your overall business, you can use the checklist then to, if you haven't got the procedures in place, or if you have and they need reviewing and updating, you can use the application process there to make sure you're meeting those standards. So there are notes that come with the application process also. They're known as SAQ notes, so self-assessment questionnaire. And these tell you what HMRC auditors expect to find as a minimum in a business process and the quality of the SOPs. So again, use that just to look at your business and look overall and see how, if you're meeting those standards or not prior to obviously making the application. Obviously, if you already have AEO, or if you want to just continue to meet those requirements, just use that as a checklist to make sure you're doing so. And then you've got quality assurance. So traders are required to implement quality assurance measures, especially in relation to critical parts of their operations. A quality assurance document will lay out what these processes are and the measures taken also to determine the risk assessment in operations. So you need to show that your quality assurance processes are clearly structured and effectively managed. So again, this is where we said about involving other teams, involving other departments, and making sure they understand why you're going for AEO and what you need from them. So you'll also need to show records of quality assurance activities, and these need to be made available as part of the auditing process for AEO status. And then we have security. So obviously, depending on the status option you're attempting to require, you'll need to document the security measures you have in place. So this applies to premises as well as the logistical process. For AEO-C, security requirements are more basic than AEO-S. However, you still need to demonstrate that basic security requirements are being consistently met. This means the keeping of security records, either digitally or on paper, as well as managing user access to the systems. This is also meaning that you need a security policy and you need to appoint someone to have overall responsibility for that. So the uptake for AEO status in the UK is obviously, as Will said earlier, slowly increasing. And from this, there's several case studies of businesses that have fallen at certain hurdles in the process. So while documentation is critical in the process, the emphasis is on practice. And this means your policies and procedures are only of use if the written document is translated into practice. So you need to be consistently auditing your business, making sure you do spot checks and making sure things are actually working as they should be. It's best that you capture it and correct it before HMRC come in and obviously audit you and find out that you're not actually following that process. So obviously communication is a key thing within a business. Do the staff understand and how they work into internal control systems? Are they working to the SOPs that have been created? Are the safety and security and quality assurance procedures being followed? Again, it's something that you just need to reiterate to a business to make sure it's being followed if you have obviously applied for AEO or have got AEO. So how to manage AEO status once obtained. You design and or implement monitoring plan to ensure business will continuously meet AEO status criteria. So it's worth putting it into the business process. If you've got a quality team or compliance team in your business, you can obviously include that in your continuous improvements and things like that in the plans within the business. There's regular internal and external AEO status compliance reviews. Obviously make sure it's continuous, it's not just a one-off operation that you've done. The checklist for managing AEO. Stay updated and informed of changes to customs legislation. So this is one of the main points at the moment. Obviously post-Brexit, we've experienced a lot of changes and guideline updates from HMRC. So just ensure that you keep on top of any legislation and any updates that's currently coming through from HMRC. Regularly update the internal policies and procedures. So constantly review them, look at them, make sure they're up to date. Communicate to HMRC any changes in the business details. So obviously once you've applied for it, you've got AEO, make sure you don't just put it to the back of the cupboard and it's forgotten about. If there's any changes to your application or your authorisation, you need to make HMRC aware of that. And disclose any errors proactively. Don't wait till HMRC finds any errors within your business. You need to disclose them ahead of any customs audits, and then obviously you can correct them prior to any audits taking place. Provide training. So obviously, again, it's part of staying updated, especially with the customs legislation. If you've got a customs team or a customs head person that can keep on top of the legislation, they also need training to make sure you're on top of everything within the business, whether that's internally or externally. And undertake AEO status compliance reviews. So again, it's all about keeping on top of it, keeping reviewing it, making sure you're compliant. If HMRC find they're not satisfied with any part of the AEO status of a business, then they can suspend or withdraw it. So there's some useful links for AEO C118 and C117 and Notice 117. And obviously the AEO benefits, which I think will maybe shared with the attendees. And then back over to Will, I think.
Great, thanks, Vicky. And yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as Vicky just said, those links and the slides and recording of this webinar will be shared with everyone in the aftermath. Hopefully by end of play tomorrow, if not sooner. So you will get a copy of all of this and all that information from our previous slide as well. But before we go into Q&A, obviously there's, as Vicky said earlier, whether it's right for your company to apply for AEO or kind of how you might go about best doing so, it's a business by business scenario. So we really do advise you to get support. The IOE itself offers consultancy offerings around AEO, and so definitely kind of looking on our website for more information about those. And the membership of institutes obviously will help towards your overall customs capacities as well, if this is of interest, or if you're just wanting to improve your customs capacity regardless of AEO status. So whether that's through our online training courses, our member webinars, again, consultancy offerings, and we also have things like our technical helpline for any queries you may have. So if you're not already a member, please do take a look at the website to find more information. And as ever, we'll send that information in the aftermath webinar email as well. If we move to the next slide, we're just going to, as we go into the final few minutes with Q&A, we're going to do another two-part question. And as with the previous polls, I will be going through your questions while you're answering. Again, this is a pick 3, and again, this is another question we're taking back to government. So please do do respond. The question here is, which of these means of support should the government utilise to help traders overcome trade barriers? Options here are providing or promoting online systems for customs compliance, supporting due diligence on partners or customers, help identifying recruiting staff in the UK, supporting staff to train in export processes, or better support to take part in trade shows. Hopefully we'll be going to trade shows again in the not too distant future. So first question, Vicky, just while people are answering that one, is from Florian, who asks, would you recommend that before the business begins an application for AEO, to contact HMRC to identify any areas they require further information on to avoid kind of missing out any details in the initial application request?
So if you're doing your internal audits and things like that anyway, you should pick up on anything that the business is missing. Obviously, HMRC will give you advice if you need it, but when you make the application, HMRC will not accept a receipt of application that's not complete. So you need to ensure, obviously, you're covering all areas prior to making the application anyway. It will be returned to you if you submit an incomplete application, and you will need to resubmit that. So my advice would be to view all the information available to you regarding the application on Gov website, create a business checklist based on that questionnaire and obviously the application, obtain and test all the areas of the business like you are HMRC. So test your business like you are an auditor coming in from HMRC. Ensure you carry out all the requirements of the AEO guidance basically before applying. If there's any areas you are unsure of and you need further guidance, if you can't find it on the Gov website, again, you've got training methods if it is understanding of it generally, or you can obviously go to HMRC and ask that question.
Thanks, Vicky, and thanks, Florian, for the question as well. I'm just going to close that poll and then put up the final 5 options. Again, pick 3 of these, and these include do more trade deals for new markets, better support in markets, i.e. embassies or consulates, better support from UK export finance, tax breaks for exporters, help with protecting intellectual property. We've had a question in from Amy, who has asked, and this is actually a question a few people have asked, Amy wants to ensure her supply chain is secure, but can she request other companies throughout her supply chain are AEO certified?
Okay, so obviously you need to understand what the business requirement is in this instance, why you're asking that question of the whole supply chain. What is there something wrong? Is there a gap in the process, or is a business not meeting their contractual requirements, for example? What are you going to gain from all the business being AEO certified? Obviously, you need to understand as well if there's subcontractors, if people are outsourcing parts of the transport route, for example, how are you going to manage this? You'll need to check your contractual agreements, as I said, throughout the supply chain. Some companies may not be covered under this contract. You can't obviously make a business apply for AEO, but it may be a request or a requirement when you're sourcing transport or intermediaries and suppliers. So you may want to put that up front as a requirement that they must have AEO. But again, the people that you've already got contracts with, that's a commercial discussion that you'll need with them. But also obviously be aware that some companies, if they need to put some money behind systems or audit process and things like that, they may actually request financial support when they're gaining this status, if it's a requirement of yourselves going out to them. So just be aware of obviously more on the contract side than anything, but yeah, just understand your business requirements for asking this question of the whole supply chain.
Sounds a wee bit complex, but I guess it's that's the research you need to do in any kind of task to ensure your supply chain is as tip top as can be.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, there's not just, for example, 3 companies involved a lot of the time. It's there's a lot of hidden complexities that you'll find when you start asking the questions.
the wonders of international trade, as they say. We've had a couple of questions around lead times or the length of time it takes to apply. So Alistair asked, how long does AEO certification last before you need to apply to renew? And Laurie's asked, what is the expected lead time for HMRC to complete an evaluation? So a lead time for evaluation first, and then how long does AEO last for?
Yeah, I believe it's around 3 months that HMRC need to get back to you after you've applied, like within that time. But then obviously they'll need to arrange the audit as well. So that will be the discussion. Once they've received your application, processed it, then they'll have to come out and actually audit the business. So obviously at the moment with COVID as well, obviously it's COVID dependent, I'm assuming as well. I don't know if that's obviously had an effect on the customs audits. I don't know if they're changing it, whether you have to send them evidence online rather than physical visits. So obviously it's something we can find out and get back to you on that. But just be aware that there may be some impact on the timings, but that they're on the Gov website, the amount of days that they're expected to turn it round. So obviously, as I said, with the external impacts at the moment, whether that's room for movement, I'm not entirely sure at the moment if that's impacting on the audit side of HMRC. Sorry, I'm
That's a
not
really
sure if
good
that answered it
point.
or will, sorry.
It's a really good point. I mean, someone did ask around the impact of social distancing restrictions on audits. There was a notification on it from government in the first part of lockdown. I can't remember exactly what that was. I think audits were continuing, but a lot of it was being done online. I'm not 100% sure on that though, so we can check that out and let you know on that if you get in contact with us. I'd say institute@export.org.uk. We can follow that one up for you. So yeah, we'll look into that for you. Okay, next question. Let's do one from, actually this is a question a few people have asked again. David has asked it in probably the clearest way. Our company has several locations and legal entities. Can I apply for AEO status on behalf of all of these different locations, or as they are all in the UK? And I guess a follow-up question would be to that, if you have a company of offices kind of throughout Europe or throughout the world, do you have to apply for each office, or can you do it as a company-wide?
Yeah, so unfortunately, if you're a group of companies, you will need to submit separate applications for each legal entity that you have. So obviously it depends on each business, because as you said, you might have different offices, but is it its own legal entity? And this is where I tried to describe earlier with larger businesses, they've got different locations and manufacturing sites and even different office sites, but is it all covered under the same legal entity? You will need to put all the locations on the application as well that you're covering with the AEO status. Obviously, HMRC will want to check all the locations as well, or at least check information around those locations. But yes, obviously, if it's worldwide and they're different legal entities, then yes, they'll have to get their own local AEO certification.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. Annalise has messaged in to say HMRC audits are being done online at the moment. So thank you, Annalise. And obviously, gov.uk will have more information. Alistair has got back to me to say we didn't answer the question around how long does AEO certification last before applying to renew. So if you can just pick that one up again, please, Vicky.
Yeah, I don't think there's an expiration date on AEO. I think what it will be is that HMRC will continue to audit and do regular audits on your business. So again, I said earlier about them being able to retract it. So if you're not meeting the standards, they can take it off you, but you wouldn't have to regularly apply for it. So again, it will be based on the audits that HMRC make with the business, but you won't have an expiration. It's just you need to keep them up to date with any changes in your business and things like that. So if you need to expand on that AEO application, like you've added more locations, or you've changed the way you run your security, again, keep them up to date with any changes you make, and then they'll regularly audit you and make sure you're meeting the standards there.
Thanks, Vicky. I hope we got to that answer there, Alistair. I'm just going to quickly close those polls. I almost forgot about them for a minute, and I'll share the results. So the first one, so this is, again, just to remind you, it's how government can support companies overcome trade barriers. So 86% of you said promote or provide online systems for customs compliance. Really interesting. 80% says support staff to train in export processes. Again, really interesting. We'll come on to some government support, which is actually out there at the moment for that at the end of the webinar. Half of you said support doing due diligence on partners and customers as well. And then in terms of the second part of that question, responses here, quite an even spread here actually. So unsurprisingly, more people said do more trade deals with new markets. And we'll see, we'll wait with bated breath to see kind of which country will be next for our UK free trade agreements. Tax breaks for exporters, unsurprisingly, that's high, up again, 58%, and better in-market support is up there as well, 52%. Thank you everyone once again for answering those polls. Interestingly, a question in from Nathan, which follows on from one of your options there. Nathan's asked, can you please mention again what qualifications a business would need in regards to employees being customs trained?
Yeah, so there's nothing unfortunately specific for customs. So HMRC will look at the experience or practical experience of the people working at that business. So they have said that you need a minimum of 3 years practical experience in the area. So if you haven't got any specific recognised educational establishment training, they will look at obviously applications with people with practical experience of customs. But obviously there are qualifications out there, even if it's certificates and things like that, just to make sure that you're up to date with any regulations and training requirements. But they have said it's 3 years practical experience also. So it's a business decision again if you want to send your members of staff on courses to make sure they're aware of customs impacts and regulations and legislation. The courses are out there, and it's always good to keep up to date with those.
Thanks, Vicky. And obviously the Institute provides a lot of qualifications as well, which we can link to afterwards, which are recognised, Ofquam recognised as well. So very much legitimate qualifications which will support any AEO application. A question in from Gavin, who's asked, do you still need a guarantee waiver or customs comprehensive guarantee if you have AEO-C?
So in regards to the waivers, obviously with post-Brexit and the easements that government have given now, obviously there are waivers out there for deferment accounts. You will get the waiver for AEO-C, but it's available for businesses at the moment. But obviously going forward, once the easements have gone away and business goes back to normal, then obviously AEO will promote and benefit your business in regards to any guarantee waivers or any special procedures and authorisations and guarantees there. So obviously it's just that extra benefit that you'll get priority with HMRC if you have got that status in place already.
Okie dokie. We'll do a few more questions, got a few more minutes left. Had a question in from Alison, who's asked, what is the benefit of a company having AEO status if their transport company does not?
Okay, so this is flipping it around from the earlier question. So obviously, again, it goes down to obviously special procedures and authorizations and making sure your company compliance record with HMRC is a really good standard. So obviously, faster clearances, you're still the importer of record for when the goods come into the UK. So your freight forwarder, obviously, if they have it, then you're more reliant on their supply chain with the safety and security issues, and they're a bit more, obviously, they're meeting those standards. So it depends on your business if you want to use that as a buy-in point to say, I will make contracts only with people with AEO because you know they meet them standards. But if you've got a long-term relationship with them and you know they're obviously meeting those standards anyway, then obviously it's a business decision to stay with them. But it will just benefit you as a trader or a business with faster clearances and authorizations and guarantees and things like that. So obviously the transport company in that instance, that would be a separate discussion with them and it'd see if it'd benefit their business. But yeah, it all comes down to the contractual agreements with yourself and them as well. But it benefits the business in the way of, like, as I keep saying, obviously the guarantees, faster clearances, special procedures, etc., with HMRC and your compliance record.
Thanks, Vicky. I hope that's helped Alison. If not, do feel free to contact us afterwards and we can pick that up and give you a bit more info. Question in from Barry, who says he's not exactly clear where you would notify people once you have AEO. Are there particular documents you'd add it to, or is it just something you put on a website like an ISO? Kind of how would you display that you've got AEO?
Yeah, I mean, recently, because the UK have obviously got their own AEO now. So recently, since Brexit happened, I have seen the new AEO logo being used, for example, on like LinkedIn or on their business websites, and any qualifications people are getting for AEO, they're using the new logo now. So it is it's standing out because it's a new logo. So yeah, obviously on any of your business documentation and things like that, obviously you can state that you are AEO authorised, obviously your emails, things like that, your websites. Yeah, you can advertise that your company is of AEO standard really across the board.
And is there any particular documents you'd use it in terms of trying to expedite kind of movements through customs?
I can I take that one away and check? Sorry, I just need to have I need to know. I just need to find out a bit more information around how it's notified with your imports and exports. So let me take that one away if that's okay. Can we follow that up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
You can follow that
thank
up.
you.
So that was with Barry, I believe. So yeah, we'll follow that up, Barry.
Thank you.
A couple more just closing questions. This question, I think it's from Ian, is asked, what is the cost for a first HMRC audit? Is it something you know offhand, or is that something we can find on gov.uk?
I wouldn't have thought there was a cost to it. I mean, the only cost implications I would have thought for a business for this instance would be the fact that you may need to develop your IT systems or develop your security around the site. So that may be the cost to the business. But HMRC, to make the application, should just come out to your business to make that audit.
Okay, great. That's yeah, that should be an easy one to research, hopefully. So yeah, there'll be information on gov.uk, I'm sure, on that one. Just a couple of clarification questions. So obviously a range of experiences on this level on this webinar. Someone asked earlier, I can't remember who, sorry, what is an EORI number? And then someone also asked, what is CFSP? So if you could just clarify those two, please.
Yep, so an EORI number, so all businesses that trade basically need an EORI number. So it's a Economic Operator Registration Identification number. You will find information on how to apply for it on the Gov website. But basically, if a business is VAT registered in the UK, you should have been given an EORI number for basically post-Brexit trade. So you just need to check with your business to see if you've already got an EORI number in place. But there is further information on the Gov website if you do search for EORI on there. The CFSP is simplified procedures for clearances. So again, there is further information on the Gov website on that. It's a process where businesses can speed up clearances through the port. It's a bit of an easement for companies as well to move goods through the port and delay any declarations to HMRC. So they're not stuck at the port. We're waiting your instructions to clear the goods.
Thanks, Vicky. And we did cover CFSP in another webinar we did recently on customs special procedures generally. So yeah, if you need more information, do check out the webinar library on Open to Export for the opportunity to watch back that webinar. It's got lots more information on CFSP. But I think we are coming to an end now. So thank you, Vicky. That's a fantastic presentation. Really, obviously, there's only so much you can do in an hour, so much an introductory session today, but we hope you found that useful, and thank you, Vicky, for the presentation and answers. So yeah, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
If we can move to the next slide. Just before we wrap up, actually one after that, thank you. Just before we wrap up, just a reminder that the Institute is providing a new Brexit support package of bespoke training for your business, which is completely fundable by new government grants worth up to £2,000. This package includes training and advisory services that can be delivered in-house. And there's also the creation of a bespoke action plan for your business around adjusting to the new rules and processes resulting from Brexit. So a really great opportunity to get free support on your Brexit needs and requirements. For more information, please do visit the website. The homepage is export.org.uk. But for now, thank you everyone for tuning in, and please do tune in. Hope to see you in the next one. So goodbye everyone, and stay safe and enjoy the hopefully not too many showers. Hopefully the sun. Anyway, thanks everyone. Bye.